They laughed when I walked out. They didn't know I was walking away with everything. My name is Carmen. I'm 34 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The sound of the air conditioner was the first thing I noticed. Low, mechanical, like a hum trying too hard to pretend it wasn't interrupting anything. It buzzed beneath the faint clicks of keyboards and the rattle of ice in forgotten Starbucks cups. Across the glass wall, the parking lot shimmered under the Georgia heat, but inside, it was freezing. I remember pressing my thumb so hard against my pen cap that I felt it crack. That tiny give of plastic, that small betrayal of silence. And then I heard her voice. Tessa. We really wanted to center the client's experience, not just their needs, but their friction points, their emotional data. And that's when the idea came to me. Her voice wasn't shaking. It wasn't hesitant or unsure. It was polished, practiced, and every word was mine. The pitch I'd stayed up all weekend to build. The one I'd written on yellow Post-its at 2 a.m, whispering into my phone recorder while my cat purred on the couch beside me. The data points she was referencing? Those were from my back-end scrub of the loyalty dashboard, a feature we hadn't even flagged until I connected the feedback thread to the cancellation metrics. I blinked. That same moment, she clicked the remote, and the next slide appeared on the conference screen. Slide title, Customer Emotions as Entry Points. My phrasing, down to the hyphen. And in the bottom right corner, where our names were supposed to be. Only hers. No co-presented by. No in collaboration with. Not even a hint of shared work. Just Tessa M., strategy lead. I watched the reflection of her slides in the glass wall behind her, watched the way her earrings didn't sway. She wasn't even nervous. She was loving it. Tessa. We're calling this the sentiment funnel. We believe it's a new way of mapping the customer life cycle, not in segments but in moments. My breath caught. That wasn't just my language. That was the name I gave it in the draft folder. Sentiment Funnel V3, revised. She'd gone into my drafts. We were on the same shared team drive, but we had our own subfolders. Mine was labeled private, but I'd told her what I was working on. We'd even whiteboarded some of it over lunch 2 Thursdays ago. She'd said it sounded so intuitive and that I should really run with it. She said she loved the way I thought in feelings. Now she was taking credit for thinking in mine. The worst part? They were eating it up. Gary from operations leaned forward like he'd just had caffeine for the first time. Jenna whispered something to her assistant and smiled. And Melissa, our director, nodded slowly, like Tessa had just solved a marketing Rubik's Cube. No one looked at me. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't interrupt. I sat there, one thumb pressed into broken plastic, the other hand under the table, digging a small crescent moon into my thigh with my fingernail. The applause came before the last slide finished animating. Tessa. Thanks, everyone. I really think this is going to help us tell better stories, not just sell better services. She didn't even glance my way. Just stepped back from the screen like she'd built the whole damn thing from scratch. Melissa. That was impressive, Tessa. Seriously. I want to see this fleshed out for next quarter's roadshow. And just like that, it was done. No one questioned the origin. No one asked who else contributed. It was hers now, signed in invisible ink, sealed by silence, delivered with a smile. I packed my laptop slowly. Tessa. Carmen, are you coming to lunch? We're celebrating. Me. No, I've got emails. I didn't look up when I said it. Just clicked my charger loose, wrapped it carefully, and waited for them to leave. When the glass door finally hissed shut behind the last of their heels and loafers, I sat there alone. I stared at the ghost of her slides still flickering on the monitor, at my sentiment funnel, my stories, my work. And for the first time that morning, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I finally knew what kind of person I was dealing with. And when the applause started, I knew silence would serve me better than anger. The hum of the projector finally faded, leaving only the buzz of fluorescent light and the faint rhythmic whine of the AC, that sterile corporate cold, the kind that made your hands dry out, your lips crack, your pulse slow. I sat perfectly still. My reflection in the black screen looked nothing like me. Same hair, same blouse, but the eyes, those looked older, tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. I'd always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. It made me good at my job. Empathy was my framework. Understanding motives, tracing emotion, decoding silence. But what I was watching in that conference room wasn't misunderstanding. It was theft wearing lipstick and pretending it was leadership. The hallway outside came alive with laughter. That kind of easy, office camaraderie that always sounds more genuine when you're the one left behind. I could picture them all in the elevator lobby. Tessa clutching her water bottle like a trophy. Gary saying something like, "You nailed it." Melissa giving her that approving nod that usually meant budget allocations would follow. I waited until the last echo faded. Then I reopened my laptop. The desktop light hit my face, too bright. My folder tree stared back like an accusation. Private, Concepts, Funnel V3, modified 2 days ago. Last opened yesterday. By Tessa. I hadn't noticed the change before, buried under prep notes and calls. But now the timestamp mocked me, so precise it felt like evidence. I hovered the cursor over it. Didn't click. Not yet. Because the shock was wearing off, and something colder was taking its place. There's a peculiar stillness that comes right after humiliation. You can almost hear the recalibration happening inside your skull. Breath steadies, eyes focus. The body wants to shake, but the brain whispers, "Not yet." That's where I was, frozen in a kind of controlled composure, cataloging every detail. Her phrasing, her slide order, the subtle pivot she made to include emotional data just before Melissa's approving nod. Every tick of that meeting lived in my head like footage I could replay. And I would. Later, when I needed it. My inbox pinged. Team lunch, Arv Bluefin Grill, sent by Tessa. Group invite. No mention of me in the body text, just celebrating a big win, so proud of what we accomplished. What we accomplished. I closed the tab. The cursor blinked on a blank email draft. I typed a few words. "Hey, Melissa, about the pitch today." Then stopped. Deleted it. There was no version of that message that wouldn't make me sound like I was begging for credit. And I wasn't begging. I was building. I minimized everything, clicked open the internal chat. My profile still had the little green dot. Active now. That's what they'd see, even as I sat in that empty conference room, motionless. I could almost hear my mentor's voice, Marcus, back from my agency days, saying, "Never confront when they're celebrating. Let the party finish, then make them sober." The reflection in the glass smirked back. I unplugged the HDMI cord, coiled it neatly, and powered down the projector. The silence that followed was satisfying, like slamming a book shut after reading the last lie. The office had emptied. Through the glass walls, I could see the open floor dotted with plants and half-empty La Croix cans. A place designed for collaboration and betrayal, apparently. I walked to my desk, heels silent on the carpet. My monitor still showed the analytics dashboard I'd built from scratch, the one that fed the very data she'd used in her slides. Tiny colored bars shifted as feedback trickled in from client portals, live numbers updating every minute. I'd taught Tessa how to read that dashboard 3 months ago. I remembered her leaning over my shoulder, chewing on a pen, saying, "You're like a translator for human behavior." I'd laughed, flattered. Now the same phrase felt like a bruise. I shut the window, grabbed my phone. There was a text from Jamie, my partner. Jamie. "How's the big presentation going? You're probably killing it right now." I stared at it, typed back, "She stole it," then deleted that too. Replaced it with, "It went fine." Because what was I supposed to say? That the woman I'd mentored just rewired my brain and walked off with the circuits? That everyone applauded her for it? That my heart was still pounding with the sound of her words? My words coming from her mouth? I pressed the phone against my thigh, breathing in slow. The office smelled faintly like citrus cleaner and burnt coffee. In another life, maybe I would have confronted her right there, called her out in front of the team, pulled up the timestamps, exposed everything. But I'd learned something from being underestimated. The quiet ones are always misjudged. People confuse silence with surrender, and silence is a hell of a weapon. By the time I left the building, the sunlight had shifted low across the asphalt. My car door felt hot to the touch, metal searing against my palm. I slid inside, turned on the AC, and just sat there for a while, watching their reflections in the glass facade of the office. Tessa and Melissa and the rest, laughing near the front steps. They looked small from where I sat, ants circling a crumb they thought they'd earned. I whispered it under my breath, the same way I used to whisper mantras before big meetings. Document everything. Because that's how betrayal stops being a wound, when you turn it into evidence. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove to a small coffee shop downtown, ordered a black coffee I barely touched, and opened my laptop. The hum of the espresso machine, the chatter of college kids, the lo-fi playlist overhead, it all faded once I started scrolling. Slack logs, shared folders, version history, access trails. Every action leaves a footprint, and hers were glowing like breadcrumbs. I took screenshots, dated them, saved them to a new private folder I named Personal Notes. A harmless label, nothing suspicious. At one point, I caught my reflection in the dark window beside me. The neon sign outside painted my face red. It didn't look like anger anymore. It looked like focus. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing I didn't need to raise my voice to win. I just needed to watch, record, wait. When I finally packed up, it was almost midnight. The city smelled like rain on hot pavement. I drove home with the window cracked, feeling the humid wind brush my face. My cat meowed when I walked in. I dropped my bag, crouched to pet her. The sound of her purring was grounding, small, consistent, honest. Everything that day hadn't been. I looked at the corkboard above my desk, the yellow post-its, the sketches, the late-night scribbles that built the sentiment funnel. My handwriting curved unevenly across the paper, proof that creation is always messy before it's polished. I sat down, opened a new note, and started typing. Day 1, observation. Subject, Tessa M. Incident, idea appropriation during internal pitch. Objective, document pattern. It read like a research log, but it was more than that. It was the beginning of something she'd never see coming. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away. The kind that doesn't reach yet but promises to. I smiled again. This time, it felt steadier. She thought she'd won, but she'd only written herself into my story, as the antagonist I didn't know I needed. And from this point on, every move she made would be recorded, measured, mapped into a funnel of my own design. The silence didn't end when the meeting did. It followed me into the elevator, into the break room, even into the quiet hum of my sedan as I sat in the parking lot, air conditioning humming, hands still glued to the steering wheel like I might drive off or crash through the glass entrance. I didn't do either. Instead, I went home and pulled out my original notes, the ones scribbled on the back of a CVS receipt, the ones I'd texted to myself at 1:47 a.m. with a typo because my eyes were too tired to care, the digital ones I'd saved with time-stamped names like Voice Memo 2 a.m. Funnel Idea Wav. I sat cross-legged on the couch and just listened to myself breathing through that recording. Me, on the voice memo. Okay, if we map their churn behavior against the survey responses, it's not really about pricing. It's emotional friction. They feel forgotten. I paused the recording and looked around my apartment. My cat blinked slowly at me from the windowsill, completely unimpressed by corporate theft or emotional betrayal. The room was dim except for the blue glow of the laptop screen, washing everything in a kind of aquarium light. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, steady and indifferent. I could hear a car outside hitting a puddle, the kind of small, meaningless sound that feels enormous when your world just cracked. I opened Slack, scrolled to last Friday. Tessa, you've been killing it. Can't wait to see what you bring Monday. She sent that smiley light bulb emoji. I stared at it for too long. That one glowing bulb. The nerve. The arrogance in that tiny, pixelated icon. The memory of that weekend was now tainted. Saturday night, pacing with a mug of reheated coffee, debating which word sounded smarter, insight or intuition. The draft I started over 3 times because I didn't want it to sound like a regular pitch. The way I had built that slide deck like a mixtape, each piece meant to tell a story, to feel human. Tessa had walked in, pressed play, and hit next on my entire mixtape. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was intimate. Because when you share ideas with someone, really share them, it's a kind of confession. It's vulnerability dressed as creativity. You show them how your brain works, what keeps you up at night, what makes you curious. You hand over a piece of your map, and she sold it as a souvenir. The next morning, I went in early, not to confront her, not to talk. I just wanted to see the desk again, see if it still felt like mine. It didn't. Her chair was already turned slightly, angled toward Melissa's office. On her screen, I could see a tab open, a Google Doc titled Q3 Roadshow Draft Outline. My gut clenched. She was already repackaging it. I walked past without stopping, the smell of her vanilla hand cream trailing after me. That same smell had once meant friendship, late nights in conference rooms, shared snacks, shared exhaustion. Now it felt chemical, artificial. Monday morning, she got flowers. A bouquet of sunflowers sat on her desk by 10:15. I walked past and saw the note tucked into the stems. Melissa. For a brilliant presentation, excited to show this off. Tessa looked up and beamed like she hadn't broken anything at all. Tessa. Oh my God, isn't this wild? Me. Yeah, wild. The word caught in my throat. I smiled like a mannequin, nodded like it didn't matter, and went back to my seat. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type. The keys looked foreign. The whole open plan office smelled like triumph, hers, not mine. That afternoon at lunch, I saw the glances, not overt, just quiet. Kelly shifted in her chair when I walked into the cafe. Jeff from UI gave me a nod that felt too polite. Politeness is a form of distance. I sat in the corner and ate my salad slowly, scrolling through emails, pretending to be booked, pretending I hadn't noticed the way conversation paused when I entered. The laughter resumed once I was seated, softer now. I caught pieces of it. Presentation, client buy-in. Melissa loved it. Every word hit like static. I forked at my salad until the lettuce wilted. My phone vibrated once. A notification from a calendar reminder I didn't even remember setting. Pitch rehearsal. Finalize deck. I almost laughed. At 3:11 p.m., HR emailed her. Subject line. Strategic Initiative Acknowledgement. Congrats. I only saw it because I was the one who tagged the innovation folder she submitted it to. My name was still listed as secondary admin on the internal archive. She hadn't changed it yet, but she would. Soon. My throat tightened. The cursor blinked over the archive logs like it was counting down. I didn't reply. I didn't drop hints or make a fuss. I just started collecting. Voice memos, draft history, Slack threads, Zoom call recordings, the one from 2 weeks ago where I said, "This could be something bigger. I'm calling it a sentiment funnel for now." And she replied, "I love it. You should pitch that." I could hear her laugh after it. That small, airy laugh people use when they've just been handed something valuable and they're pretending it's casual. My finger hovered over the play button on that clip at least a dozen times, but I didn't share it yet. Instead, I made a new folder, labeled it Timestamp Vault, and I started placing everything in it. Each file got its own subfolder, each one labeled by date and source. It felt mechanical at first, just clicking, dragging, renaming. But then it became ritual, a way to rebuild control. Every time I added something new, I felt my pulse slow down. Every screenshot was a breath, every export a heartbeat. I even went through old meeting notes, found the photo she'd taken of the whiteboard the day we brainstormed the early prototype. My handwriting was right there, messy but clear. Emotion, tal, conversion trigger. Funnel as empathy map. Her caption under the photo, "Love this session." So many great ideas coming together. Coming together. That was generous of her. I leaned back in my chair, the light from my laptop washing over the wall, and I thought about the thin line between teamwork and theft. It's invisible until someone crosses it, and by the time you notice, you're already bleeding. I started sleeping less, not because I was anxious, but because I was alert, watching, logging. Every move she made was another entry in the vault. Every compliment she received became data. Wednesday morning, Melissa mentioned during stand-up that Tessa's sentiment funnel might be featured in next month's internal newsletter. She used that phrase like it had been around for years. I kept my expression neutral, took notes on the meeting as usual. My pen didn't shake, but inside, something colder than anger began to form. Purpose. After stand-up, Tessa approached my desk, holding her coffee cup with both hands like it was a prop in a play. Tessa. Hey, I know this week's been crazy. I just wanted to say, I couldn't have done it without your early feedback. Seriously. Me. My feedback? Tessa. Yeah, like, you really helped me think differently about the emotional stuff. The customer feelings thing? That was super inspiring. I tilted my head. Inspiring, she said, like I was some Pinterest quote. Me. Glad it helped. Tessa smiled, relieved. She thought the wound was cauterized, that a little acknowledgement would neutralize me, but acknowledgement without ownership is manipulation. When she walked away, I opened my notebook again, added a new entry to the vault. Event, post-presentation interaction. Timestamp, 11:46 a.m. Summary, minimal remorse, attempted soft placation. By that evening, I had collected enough evidence to tell the story twice over, screenshots, voice files, metadata, the digital breadcrumbs of deceit. But the more I gathered, the less I wanted to rush. Proof wasn't the goal, timing was. Because she didn't just steal my work, she bet her career on it. And if you're patient enough, people who bet big eventually overplay their hand. The next Friday, as the sun set behind the office towers, I sat at my desk long after everyone had gone. The city outside glowed orange and soft. I could hear the cleaning crew rolling carts down the hallway. I opened the folder one last time, scrolled through everything I'd collected. 87 items. A pattern was forming, her pattern. For the first time all week, I felt calm. There's a kind of quiet joy in knowing the truth when everyone else doesn't. It's not pride, it's precision. The world is still catching up to the version of reality you already know exists. I saved one last note to the vault. Don't react, record. Then I closed the lid of my laptop, packed my bag, and whispered to no one. She just gave me the blueprint. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned through me that first night. It had sharpened into a blade the morning after, when I saw her waving across the office like nothing had happened. But by Wednesday, what I felt wasn't anger. It was calculation. Every click, every step, every smile she gave. I watched it all like I was studying a chessboard, and she was the player who'd forgotten I still had pieces left. That morning, I logged into our archive system. The company used an internal backup tool called DocTrail. It synced everything we created under our employee ID, even if we didn't submit it formally. It was mostly a failsafe, a place to pull files back if someone deleted something accidentally. But it had one feature Tessa clearly didn't know about: metadata logs. Each time a file was saved, it recorded the device ID, time, even whether it had been renamed or duplicated from an earlier source. I pulled up mine. Sentiment Funnel V1 May 19 PPPTX. Uploaded, Saturday, 11:42 p.m. Device, my personal MacBook. User ID, cnash.2247. Then I pulled up hers. Customer Emotions, pitch deck, final PPTX. Uploaded, Sunday, 8:09 p.m. Device, company Surface. User ID, T. Marshall, TALS 12. Copied from unknown source. I knew exactly what the source was. The glow from my monitor painted the room in a sterile white. My reflection hovered faintly in the screen. Tired eyes, pressed lips, the quiet face of someone who had stopped flinching. I took a screenshot of the log window, cropped it neatly, saved it as DocTrail Proof Cond ING, then opened Slack. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. I felt the faint thump of my pulse in my fingertips, but not from nerves, from control. Me. Hey, just wanted to loop you in on the original sentiment funnel doc, attaching my early draft from Saturday night just for reference. I CC'd Melissa, and our legal liaison, Victoria, who just happened to be tagged in the compliance thread about pitch source tracking the week before. The beauty of Slack? Everything is timestamped. Every word is archived. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to know when to type. I hit send. The tiny message-delivered checkmark appeared. Then, silence. Tessa didn't reply for almost an hour. I watched her profile bubble flicker green, then gray. Once, twice. She'd seen it. I could picture her at her desk, pretending to type something else, maybe, glancing around, waiting to see if Melissa would react first. When her reply finally came, it was short. Tessa. Didn't realize this was still open for discussion. Let's chat offline? Offline. She wanted plausible deniability now. But it was too late, because I'd started a new breadcrumb trail, this time in the open, and I made sure it was clean, professional, and emotionless. Just facts. Me. Happy to clarify. Just making sure the timeline is accurate since Melissa asked about origin stories. I'll send over the version history too. There. Polite, surgical. No adjectives, no accusation. She didn't respond again. The channel went quiet except for a few stray messages from other teams. A GIF here, a reaction emoji there, office noise in digital form. But beneath it, I could feel the current shifting. I'd set something in motion. That night, I stayed late in the office. I wasn't working. I was combing. Emails, Zoom recordings. Our shared Google Doc from 2 weeks ago, the one she abandoned halfway through because she wasn't feeling well. The comments still showed my name beside all the edits. Her name? One sentence. Maybe we keep this part looser. I scrolled slowly, highlighting my own revisions, tracing the path of thought that had built the foundation she'd stolen. I could almost hear our conversation from that afternoon, faint and ghostly, overlapping with the tapping of my keyboard now. She'd leaned back in her chair, half smiling. You really think emotions are measurable? And I'd said, they already are. We just pretend they're not. It hit me then how much of myself I'd poured into those conversations, how freely I'd handed her the architecture of my work. I exported that too. PDF. Time-stamped. Archived. The next morning, I did the most important thing of all. I submitted the official version of my deck to the corporate archive. Backdated attachments, original logs, screenshot of metadata, all wrapped inside a folder labeled Initial Pitch Draft, Original Timeline. I copied the compliance team. I copied Tessa's manager. No commentary, just a short note. Me. Flagging for clarity ahead of Q3 presentations, full version trail attached for review. That was it. No emojis, no passive tone. Just a clean sentence that could survive legal scrutiny. I clicked send. My outbox went quiet. The rest of the office buzzed faintly behind the glass wall. People laughing near the break room, the distant smell of burnt popcorn, the hum of printers. It felt surreal, like watching a sitcom after a storm. I leaned back, let the chair creak, and stared at the message sent confirmation on screen. My pulse steadied. The moment was oddly serene. Not triumph, not revenge. Just gravity settling in the right direction for once. At 4:58, Melissa walked past my desk. She smiled politely, the kind of managerial smile that hides curiosity. Melissa. Hey, Carmen, good initiative on the version trail. I like the attention to detail. Me. Of course. Melissa. We'll review it next week, just to keep everything consistent. I nodded. She kept walking, no mention of Tessa, but the compliment landed like a quiet shift in pressure. When you plant a fact, it grows roots. At 5:13 p.m., my Slack pinged. Tessa. Why are you making this weird? The words popped up in a single bubble, no punctuation except that question mark. I could almost hear her voice saying it, low, tight, performatively calm. She still didn't get it. I wasn't making anything. I was unmaking her lie. I let the message sit there for a minute before replying. I wanted her to feel the gap, that uncomfortable stretch of silence that forces people to question themselves. Then I typed, slow and deliberate. Me. Not weird, just documenting. And hit send. The typing indicator popped up for a moment, then vanished. Outside, the office lights dimmed on the timer system. The reflection of the hallway glowed faintly in the window, cutting across my screen like a mirror. My own face looked calm, almost detached. The war wasn't loud anymore. It was administrative. Paper trails instead of arguments. Screenshots instead of shouting. I stayed another hour, tidying my desktop, renaming files, organizing my evidence into categories. Deck versions, metadata proof, Slack correspondence, legal CC threads, each one carefully labeled, color-coded, dated. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was writing history in real time. When I finally shut the laptop, the city outside had gone dark. A late bus hissed at the curb. Somewhere down the block, someone laughed. Life went on, oblivious to the quiet coup happening under fluorescent light. I walked to the elevator, the echo of my heels sharp against the linoleum. Pressed the button, waited. The soft hum of the machinery above sounded like a mechanical sigh. Inside the mirrored walls, my reflection stared back at me. The same woman who'd walked out of that meeting days ago, but different. My shoulders straighter, my eyes sharper. I wasn't chasing recognition anymore. I was building inevitability. When the elevator doors slid open on the lobby floor, I whispered to myself, let her wonder. Because now, the silence wasn't her weapon anymore. It was mine. Monday came again, like it always does in corporate America. Too soon, too bright, and too full of polite small talk no one means. The city was still waking up when I left my apartment. Pale light spilled between the blinds, catching on the dust that hung suspended like secrets no one cared to clean. The streets below hummed with early traffic, engines idling, brakes hissing, the familiar rhythm of repetition. Another Monday, another round. I woke up before the alarm. My body was already running on the memory of routine. Coffee mug preset, clothes laid, out, laptop zipped into my bag like a weapon waiting for deployment. I didn't even need to think anymore. Muscle memory had taken over where sleep used to live. My evidence folder sat on the desk, mirrored twice. One copy on my iCloud, one on a physical USB drive I'd labeled insurance. The word was handwritten in black ink, underlined once. It looked almost dramatic, like something out of a spy movie, but there was nothing theatrical about it. It wasn't paranoia. It was protocol. The air outside was humid, the kind that sticks to your skin before you even make it to the car. I watched my reflection in the elevator doors as they slid open. Same clothes, same calm, but the eyes? They'd changed, focused, detached. When I walked into the office, the air felt different. Conversations broke off faster. The hum of gossip travels differently through glass walls. You can't hear the words, but you can feel their weight. I caught a few stares. The receptionist, usually all smiles and chatter, gave me a too-tight version this time. The kind that says, I've heard something, but I'm not supposed to know. My heels clicked softly on the polished floor as I crossed the lobby. The morning light fractured through the frosted windows, cutting thin stripes across the carpet like prison bars. I half smiled at the metaphor and kept walking. At 9:04 a.m., the meeting invite popped up. Subject: Clarification Meeting. Sentiment Funnel Authorship. Attendees: Melissa, Director, HR Rep, Victoria, Tessa Marshall, and me. I stared at it for a long moment, sipping coffee I didn't taste. The corner of my mouth lifted just slightly. It wasn't joy. It was inevitability. When you build a storm carefully enough, you don't need thunder. By the time I walked into the glass conference room, the air conditioning was on full blast. It always was before big meetings, nerves disguised as climate control. Tessa was already seated. Her posture was perfect, her hands folded too neatly on the table. Nails freshly done, hair smooth, deliberate. She'd even picked the kind of blazer that screams, I'm composed. But her eyes gave her away. Just a little too wide, darting once toward the door before settling on the notebook in front of her. Her expression was pulled tight into that corporate half-smile people wear when they think the storm will pass if they look calm enough. Melissa sat at the head of the table, scrolling through something on her iPad. Victoria from HR had her notebook open, pen poised, professional neutrality painted across her face. The air smelled faintly of cold coffee and tension. Melissa looked up. "Thanks for joining us, both of you. I just want to make sure there's no confusion about this project before it goes to the client." Tessa jumped in like she'd been waiting for her cue. "Of course. I think there's just been a misunderstanding. I pulled together Carmen's research into a more refined form. Me. Research I built, drafted, and named." The interruption landed like a dropped pin. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp, startled, like I'd just broken script. She wasn't expecting me to talk yet, not calmly, not clearly. Melissa leaned back slightly, assessing. "Carmen, you had some documentation you wanted to share?" I nodded once. "I do." Then stood up. My movements were deliberate, unhurried. I reached for the HDMI cable, plugged it into my laptop. The screen mirrored onto the wall-mounted display with a quiet chime. Slide 1 appeared. Dock Trail Metadata Log. Saturday, 11:42 p.m. C. Nash, 247. The cool light of the projector hit my face, washing out my expression, leaving only the words glowing behind me. Slide 2. Version history. Sentiment funnel. V1 PPTX. Dates, times, edits. My fingerprints on every frame. Slide 3. Slack thread, time-stamped. My message. Still refining the sentiment funnel. Her reply. "Love it. You should pitch that." I didn't speak over it, didn't rush. I just clicked through each slide, one after the other, the sound of the mouse like a metronome. I let the silence stretch between us. Not awkward silence, but judicial silence. The kind that builds tension on its own. By the time I reached slide 4, the reflection of her face in the glass wall was pale. Her smile had started to crack, one muscle twitch at a time. Tessa stammered. This must be some sort of mix-up, maybe the wrong version." Me. "There's only one version, Tessa. The one you uploaded Sunday night. It's the same file, different name. You didn't even change the transitions." Her mouth opened, then closed. The pen in Victoria's hand paused mid-word. Melissa's brows drew together. Melissa leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. "I'm sorry, Tessa, but this looks pretty definitive." The HR rep didn't look up. Her pen resumed moving, steady strokes across the paper. The sound was delicate, rhythmic, like the faint scratching of accountability being recorded in real time. No one said a word. I clicked to the final slide. The projector hummed, then stabilized. White text on a black background filled the screen. "She stole my story. I rewrote the ending. It wasn't for drama, it was for closure." Then I unplugged my laptop. The silence that followed was thick enough to feel. You could hear the AC working overtime, filling the space where excuses had just died. No one clapped this time. No one moved. Melissa cleared her throat softly, like the act of speaking required permission. "Melissa, Carmen, thank you for clarifying. We'll handle this internally." Her voice was even, but I caught it. The small inflection, the professional version of you were right. I nodded once, quietly, packed my laptop back into my bag. The zipper's hiss filled the room like punctuation. Then I stood. The air shifted behind me as I walked to the door. Every step echoed against the glass walls. Behind me, she tried to speak. Her voice wavered. "Tessa." It wasn't like that. I thought we were collaborating. There was so much overlap and—" "Melissa, let's save that for the internal review." The door clicked shut behind me before she could finish. Outside, the hallway felt brighter, colder. My reflection in the glass caught the sunlight just right. Eyes steady, mouth still. The hum of the office resumed, faintly distorted by the walls. I kept walking. Past the break room, where someone was laughing too loudly. Past the printer that had jammed again. Past the small victories that used to matter to me before I realized how fragile fairness was in this building. When I reached my desk, I sat down, powered up the laptop again, and saved the presentation one more time. Not because I needed to, but because repetition has its own kind of peace. In the distance, through the glass, I could still see the movement inside the conference room. Melissa talking, Victoria writing, Tessa gesturing helplessly, words spilling from her mouth like they could still undo digital proof. But all I heard in my head was the steady buzz of the air conditioner, that same mechanical hum that had soundtracked my humiliation weeks before. Only now it didn't feel oppressive. It felt like white noise, because the silence was mine now. I'd taken it back, and her smile? It was gone, peeled away from her face like paint under heat. The building felt different after that day, quieter, like the hum of the air conditioner had lost its rhythm. People still said good morning, but their eyes lingered a second longer, unsure if I was a cautionary tale or a quiet victory walking past. It's strange how quickly an office learns a new mythology. One week you're invisible, the person who takes notes, who stays late, who makes sure the slides are clean and the data adds up. The next week, you're a whisper. Did you hear what happened? HR got involved. She's the one who... No one finishes that sentence out loud. 2 weeks later, I got the calendar invite. Subject, Strategic Transition Meeting. Host, Melissa attendees, Executive Team, HR, and me. I knew what it meant before I opened it. There's a rhythm to these things. The calm after exposure, the corporate pause where everyone pretends decisions are being made, even though they already have been. When I walked into that same conference room, the one that used to make my chest tighten, I noticed her desk down the hall was empty. No papers stacked neatly, no half-drunk latte sweating on a coaster. Just a single coffee mug left behind, lipstick smudge dried on the rim, and a small sticky note with her old extension scratched out. Her chair was turned slightly away from the desk, like someone had left mid-thought and never returned. She hadn't been fired, not officially, just reassigned. Pending review. That's what HR calls a slow goodbye, the corporate version of exile. A quiet, administrative vanishing act. Inside the conference room, the air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and power. Melissa sat near the head of the table, posture perfect, a soft but real smile curving her mouth. Victoria from HR was there too, a tablet open, stylus poised, the silent witness. Melissa looked up. Carmen, we'd like you to take over the client portfolio you helped build. Her voice carried none of the tension it had weeks ago. It was steadier, lighter, like the storm had passed and she could finally acknowledge what had always been true. You've proven... She paused, eyes flicking to Victoria before finishing, exceptionally thorough. A small smile. Then, with just the right amount of gravity, she added, and ethical. That word hung there, deliberate and heavy. A soft verdict disguised as praise. I nodded. Professional smile. Steady hands folded over the table. But inside, something shifted. Not pride. Not even relief. Just stillness. The kind that comes when the noise finally stops. When you realize you don't have to prove anything anymore. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. I spoke for less than one. When it ended, Melissa shook my hand, firm, warm, the kind of handshake reserved for people the company wants to keep. I walked out, heels clicking softly against the tile, and glanced once more at her empty desk. The mug was still there, the smudge of lipstick catching the light. It was odd how something so small could hold so much finality. After the meeting, I went home early. The sky was a gray-blue bruise, low clouds hanging over Atlanta like they hadn't decided whether to rain or move on. I poured myself a glass of wine. Not a toast, not a celebration, just a quiet exhale. The kind that tastes like relief and fatigue mixed together. My apartment was still, except for the low purr of my cat and the hum of the fridge. I set my laptop on the table and opened it one last time. There, sitting at the top of my drive, was the same file that started it all. Sentiment Funnel, via 1, May 19 PPTX. The name glowed faintly in the screen's reflection, a ghost of the person I'd been when I made it. Tired, hopeful, naive enough to think good work spoke for itself. I clicked it open. The slides appeared one by one, glowing softly in the dim light. The colors felt muted now, not from design, but from distance. Every chart, every line of text carried fingerprints, versions of who I'd been while building it. I scrolled through slowly, remembering the late nights, the half-eaten dinners, the 2 a.m. voice memos whispering into the dark. I reached the last slide, the quote I'd left on the screen that day. She stole my story. I rewrote the ending. This time, when I read it, it didn't sound like revenge. It sounded like survival. I whispered it out loud to the empty room, my own voice soft, almost detached. The sound disappeared into the air, absorbed by the quiet. A knock on the door startled me. It was the delivery guy with my Thai takeout, a reminder that real life keeps going even when your personal war ends. I signed the receipt, thanked him, and carried the bag inside. The smell of basil and chili filled the apartment. Small, ordinary life again. No drama, no eyes watching. Just the soft rhythm of chopsticks against paper cartons and the hum of the city outside. As I ate, I realized how anticlimactic peace can be. There's no music cue, no applause, just the absence of friction. That night, I sat by the window. The Atlanta skyline blinked in faint blues and golds. The lights shimmered like small, stubborn hopes refusing to die. The glass was cool under my fingertips. My reflection looked almost like someone I used to know, calmer, older, sharper, and I realized something. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't have to scream or slam doors. It can look exactly like professionalism, like patience, like letting the truth walk itself to the finish line while you stay silent and still. Because silence, in the right hands, is not weakness. It's direction. The next morning, I walked into my new office, her old one. The air felt different in there, clearer, lighter. The view stretched wide over Peachtree Street, sunlight slicing between the blinds. Same desk, same chair, same computer, different energy. I set down my laptop, adjusted the monitor, and opened a blank slide deck. At the top, I typed a new title, Integrity and Innovation. Simple, honest, a reminder. I leaned back, watching the cursor blink. There was no need to rush anymore. Some endings don't need applause, just light. And as the morning sun crept across the desk, touching the corner of that new slide, I thought about everything she'd taught me without meaning to. She taught me that silence can be power, that professionalism can be revenge, and that sometimes the best way to win is to stop playing their game entirely. The city buzzed awake outside. Phones rang, coffee brewed. Somewhere down the hall, a printer jammed again. Life perfectly ordinary. I smiled, closed the old file for the last time, then started typing into the new one. She taught me how silence can speak louder than credit. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.